my friend looks down and she's like, "Oh my God, you are bleeding so much." Well, hello friends. Welcome back to Disabled in Nature, where we talk about all things that are disabled in nature, and sometimes we might even go outside. We're not going outside today, and we probably won't be going outside for a while because it's winter here in Michigan, and there's like 6 inches of snow on the ground, and it's literally negative 12 degrees today. So, not doing that. Today is going to be the first in a series of probably a lot of videos where I'm going to tell you a little bit about my experience growing up with a progressive disability. My progression journey, if you will, based on how I remember it. If you're new here, hi, my name is Marissa. I have FSHD, or Facioscapulohumeral muscular dystrophy. It's a progressive neuromuscular degenerative disease. People with this kind of muscular dystrophy have progressive asymmetrical weakness throughout their body. That means that muscle groups on either side of the body, one side might be strong and one side might be weak, things like that. Most people that are diagnosed with this condition don't get diagnosed until they're like mid-20s, so about the age I am now. And some people don't even get diagnosed until their 40s or 50s. And some people have only upper body involvement, but a lot of people also have lower body involvement. So core, trunk muscles, leg muscles, ankle muscles, feet, stuff like that. So some people with this condition have troubles walking eventually, and some don't. And some people don't get diagnosed later in life, and some people have something called early onset FSHD, which is what I have, which means that you start showing symptoms in childhood. For me, I always showed symptoms in my face and my upper body, but it wasn't until I was about 13 or 14 years old that I started to see the condition affect my lower body. And that's what I want to talk about today, is how I started realizing that my muscular dystrophy was moving to my legs, what that was like, and how I went from running track to not being able to run at all over the course of 3 months. FSHD is a genetic condition, so if we back up to my early childhood where all I had was the facial weakness, like, see this pucker? I've always had that. And I was having difficulties like blowing up balloons, whistling, things like that, or not able to lift my arms above my head. These are always things that I had as a child. So since FSHD is genetic and my father and my grandfather were diagnosed before I was born, I always knew that I had it, and so my facial weakness and my upper arm and shoulder weakness never really worried me. I knew what was going on. I don't remember it really affecting me too much as a kid. There were some things that I did a little bit differently, like in PE class, in gymnastics, like I had a hard time throwing a basketball because this is about as high as the hand goes. I couldn't really do a cartwheel because my shoulders wouldn't support my weight when I was upside down. I couldn't really do a sit-up because my core muscles were weaker than they should be and things like that. But it didn't affect my legs until I was a teenager. And I can remember thinking as a kid, watching my father progress and watching his gait change because of the muscles that were getting weaker in his lower body. I remember thinking like, this is fine. This is going to be okay as long as it doesn't come from my legs one day. I was a rather dramatic child. And now, fast forward 20 years later, I use a power wheelchair. So clearly it did. Clearly it did come from my legs. And let me tell you about how that happened. So we'll start in the spring of my 7th grade year, where I ran track. I loved to run as a kid. It was one of my absolute favorite things to do. I would run everywhere. I would ride my bike everywhere. I would climb trees. I was a very physically active outdoor child. And so when I had the opportunity to join track in the 7th grade, I was like, oh, that sounds really fun. I'll do that. I remember running being difficult at that time, but I thought it was just because I had poor stamina. Like, I always thought it was just because I was bad at running. I had a really hard time, even running a quarter mile. If the whole team would go and run a quarter mile, I would always be coming up the back and I would always be really far behind everybody. And when we did stair sets, so when we were out at our stadium, and the team would be tasked with, everybody run 5 sets of stairs, which is like running up and down all of the bleachers. And then you run around and then you do it again 5 times. I'm from a rather small town. Our stadium was not that big, so it shouldn't have been quite that much of an undertaking for 12 to 13-year-olds. But for me, it was. I remember the day that our track coach assigned us the 5 stair sets, and I got to 3 and was just done, exhausted. I remember feeling really bad about that. I remember feeling like disappointed in that I needed to make an excuse for why I couldn't do it. Even though I knew I had muscular dystrophy, I wasn't aware that it was affecting my lower body yet at this point. And so I had made friends with the slowest member of the track team, and I always tried to kind of like pull her into my, my cheating, which turns out wasn't cheating. I was just literally losing muscle strength. I wasn't lazy. I wasn't cheating. I was just getting weaker. So I remember always trying to convince her, like, hey, let's just go meet up with the rest of the team, like pretend that we did finish the stair sets, or, the coach said that we need to run this quarter mile, but we can just walk the last 100 feet, and it'll be fine. So track was definitely hard for me. To a certain extent, I must have known that my muscular dystrophy was affecting my running performance, because I remember coming to the coach after a practice one day and saying, I don't want to participate in meets. I don't want to compete, because I thought that I would just be bringing the team down. I thought I would be slowing the team down. I said, I don't want to compete. I just want to come to practice. And I remember him being really confused. And he was one of my teachers as well. He was a nice man. And so he was really confused, but he was like, well, okay, if that's what you want. And so he let me just come to practice. And I went to all the meets, and I sat in the bleachers and I cheered my teammates on, and I went to practice, and I didn't do well at practice. That was okay for me, but I do remember it having an undertone of it hurt. It did. But I am really thankful that I ran track, or that I participated in practice for track anyway, because it gives me a really solid timeline for what happened next. So I was on the track team in May, that's track season. And in the summer of that same year, I was in a play. My parents have a theater company, and we were doing a play that summer called The Haunting of Will Shakespeare. I played a witch. We were doing this play outside in the middle of the woods somewhere. It was a really good time. That must have been in July or August that we were doing this play. So 2-ish months had elapsed from when I ran track. And I remember there was a part of the set that was it was supposed to be a tree stump. It did look like a tree stump, but it was basically milk cartons or milk crates that were leveled together to, so that we could stand on it and make a leveled thing. I can remember doing this one witchy thing where we as part of the scene, where we grabbed hands, and we were spinning around the stump. And I remember that turning motion being difficult, which I can now identify as my right leg becoming weaker. And I remember it being difficult to step up onto those milk crates. And there was one scene where we had to run away from something that had happened on stage, and we had to run back through the woods 50 feet maybe. This is the first memory I have of not being able to run. But I remember getting this direction to run away from the scene and not being able to do that. And it was really uneven ground, so that made tripping more likely, so I was a little bit more careful. And I remember trying to run away and lagging behind the 2 other people. It was so we were the 3 witchy sisters, whatever. So I had 2 other people that were running away with me, and I was behind them. And I remember thinking, I can't actually run. I can't do this. I'm slow. I'm falling behind. The biggest emotion I remember at this time in response to that was, I need to hide this. I need to do whatever I can to hide the fact that this is happening to me, that I'm losing this. Even though I, in theory, knew exactly what was happening to me. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't express how I was feeling about it to anybody. From my knowledge, I tried to keep it a secret. So after this realization of, I can't run anymore, my memory is a little foggy and I don't really remember how I felt after that until really the next year. But I do remember another significant thing happening I'm pretty sure it happened in the fall of my 8th grade year, was that I was, for context, the first thing that I was experiencing that was causing me difficulties running is something called foot drop. It's where the muscles of the calf and the ankle become weak, and so instead of being able to walk heel toe, my foot could no longer pick my toes up to do the heel part. So my toes were just kind of starting to skid across the ground, and this made me a big trip hazard. So the next thing I remember that happened in this timeline is that I was walking home from school with a friend. I think it was the fall. So this was about 4 months after I ran track. And I'd completely lost the ability to run, but that was just the beginning. I remember walking home from school with a friend and I was distracted. I think I was dancing to ringtones on my little LG Neon slide phone, and I hit my toe on a bump in the sidewalk. It didn't really hurt that bad at first, and so I just kind of blew it off and we kept walking. And then 20 seconds later, my friend looks down and she's like, "Oh my God, you are bleeding so much." So I looked down and there was blood everywhere. Basically what had happened was the trigger warning if you're squeamish. Thankfully, I don't have any pictures of this. But basically what happened was I had hit my toe on it was like a sidewalk that had lifted. And so I hit my toe into the lifted part of the sidewalk. I'm assuming it was because the foot drop was beginning. So I looked down and the entire skin portion on the front of my big toe had popped off. And it was still there. It just had separated. I'm so sorry. And there was just blood everywhere. So we kind of pulled over to the side of the sidewalk under this tree, and I called my mom, and I was literally 7 minutes from home by walking. And so my mom came and picked me up and we bandaged the toe and things. Yeah, so that happened because my ankle was starting to become weak, and that's the second thing that I remember to eventually lose my ability to walk entirely. And the toe thing happened 3 more times over the course of the next year and a half. It was a very traumatic time for my toes. So yeah, those are the 3 experiences that I can remember from the summer when I lost my ability to run. It all turned out fine in the end. I'm in a stable mental place now, but that time in my life between, that first noticing, hey, something's wrong, I kind of can't run anymore, to when I finally started using a wheelchair was a really tumultuous time in my life. There was a lot of grief. There was a lot of denial. There was a lot of repression on my part. It was really hard to go through. I do sincerely and genuinely believe that my disability has enriched my life more than it has taken from it. But man, those years were really, really hard because I had grown up with this thing that I loved to do, right? I loved to run. I loved being active, and in those years, I slowly watched it slip away from me. And I think that the grief associated with that, especially in that age range, is a set of emotions that a lot of people don't have to deal with until they're old, until they're in their 60s, 70s, 80s. It's coupled with the fact that you're young, and so you have the added issue of wondering, what does this mean for my life moving forward? Yeah, it was really difficult. But it did turn out okay in the end, in my opinion, which if I would have told myself at 13 or 14 that, hey, one day you're going to be a full-time power wheelchair user and you're going to be okay with that, I wouldn't have believed you. For anyone that is young and going through this, it's going to be okay. My biggest regret is that I didn't reach out to people. I didn't seek out people that were going through the same thing as me. It was a little bit more difficult because social media, like Facebook had just started being a thing, and Instagram didn't exist, and YouTube barely existed. And so there's so much more representation and so many more online communities and things that you can participate in now that I didn't have when this was happening to me. So I really do think that community is the best coping strategy. So if this is happening to you, or maybe your kid, maybe your friend, make sure they know that like it's okay, that it's gonna be fine, that it's gonna be hard, and it's gonna suck, but that they can do it and that they're not alone and that there are people out there that they can talk to if they need to. All right, well, I think that's all for today, my friends. Like I said, I think this is gonna be the first in a probably rather long series of me telling you about my experiences growing up with this progressive disability. It's really cold outside. There's so much snow that I literally can't leave my house. So I have a lot of time to just sit and chat. So leave me a comment about what kind of stories you would want to see and what kind of experiences you've had. I'd love to have a chat. I'd love to have a discussion, a dialogue, make some friends. We're all friends here, I feel, already. Give this video a itty bitty little thumbs up if you liked it, and don't forget to subscribe to see more. Go follow me over on Instagram at Disabled in Nature for more extras and shenanigans. And until next time, I hope you are staying warm. If you do get outside, don't forget to bundle up, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.